Mr. Secretary, in your opening statement, you stated, at the Department of Defense, we are sweeping away distraction to focus on our core mission of warfighting. However, since your confirmation, your office has been consumed by high turnover and disarray. At least 3 senior aides were fired and subsequently investigated for leaks, alleged leaks to the press. Your first chief of staff has since left his position, and to the best of my knowledge, that position is vacant. The Inspector General is reviewing your use of Signal app to send sensitive information pertaining to military operations in Yemen, not only to senior government officials, but to your wife, your brother, and your personal lawyer. Finally, according to press reports, you have threatened a polygraph test against senior members of the military. As I said in my opening statement, this is a dangerous world. You know that. And this turmoil in your own office is not contributing, I think, to the clarity and thoughtfulness.
This may look like a routine oversight exchange, but it's actually a stress test of civilian control, military readiness, and executive accountability. What's really being tested here is whether speed and loyalty are being prioritized over stability and institutional continuity. This raises broader questions about how power is exercised inside the national security apparatus and what happens when leadership turnover collides with global risk. In this video, we'll break down how personnel decisions, communication practices, and command gaps intersect, and why the consequences extend far beyond one hearing room.
First, let me apologize to Miss McDonald, who I said was Miss McDougal. You're Irish, right?
My husband is, yes, sir.
Well, that's good enough. Thank you. You were Scotch for a few minutes, but I apologize, ma'am. And, Mr. Secretary, you have fired a number of general and flag officers, and you clearly have the authority to do that, but there was no cause given, and it's also deeply concerning it's taken a long time to appoint successors. I understand that today you announced that the nominee for CNO will be Admiral Darrell Caudle. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Well, we still have many of these positions open, including the U.S. Cyber Command, which is absolutely critical. Do you believe that these lack of nominated leaders are affecting our warfighting abilities?
Sir, I believe we all serve at the pleasure of the President. And in every single position, we're looking for the right man or woman to fill that role to execute on behalf of the missions of this department. And we're doing it expeditiously in every case.
Again, do you have any anticipation of when we'll receive the nominee for Cyber Command?
Sir, as I mentioned before, we have a very capable deputy at Cyber Command who has taken the helm. So it's not as if it's without leadership, very much so. But we are, as recently as yesterday, had a high-level discussion of exactly what that will be.
Mr. Secretary, in your opening statement, you stated, at the Department of Defense, we are sweeping away distraction to focus on our core mission of warfighting. However, since your confirmation, your office has been consumed by high turnover and disarray. At least 3 senior aides were fired and subsequently investigated for leaks, alleged leaks to the press. Your first chief of staff has since left his position, and to the best of my knowledge, that position is vacant. The Inspector General is reviewing your use of Signal app to send sensitive information pertaining to military operations in Yemen, not only to senior government officials, but to your wife, your brother, and your personal lawyer. Finally, according to press reports, you have threatened a polygraph test against senior members of the military. As I said in my opening statement, this is a dangerous world. You know that. And this turmoil in your own office is not contributing, I think, to the clarity and thoughtfulness and decisiveness necessary.
Sir, I would just say the media loves sensational headlines that are not connected at all to reality. If you look at the execution of our office and what we've done on the President's priorities, I'm very proud of what we've been able to do in 140 days. And when you move fast to reestablish deterrence and restore a warrior ethos and rebuild the military, it's going to come with some changes. But when you look at the leadership structure, both in uniform and on the civilian side of the Defense Department, it's as strong and capable as it's ever been. And I would contrast it with the chaos of the world under the previous administration. The debacle in Afghanistan, war unleashed in Ukraine, what happened on October 7th, that was a view of weakness and chaos unleashed by the Biden administration under the previous defense secretary. So if a few changes have to be made in the first portion of my term in order to get it right, I think that's pretty acceptable to establish deterrence and rebuild our military and restore the warrior ethos.
Well, Mr. Secretary, you can cite those examples. History, I might have a different perspective. As I understand it, the direction to leave Afghanistan was an agreement with President Trump in Doha, which left our forces in a very precarious position since they were there for a year and they had to come out. And Taliban knew that, and they were going after them. But let me move on to another issue, which is
30 seconds.
35. We have had detainees in Guantanamo, and we have used military flights to get them there. The problem, I think, is that some of these military flights have not contained DHS agents on it. And so, in effect, the military becomes not just the custodial agents, they're also the control agents. And that would seem to me a violation of military procedures. Is that practice continuing?
Senator, every aspect of that mission is in coordination with DHS and with DHS officials.
So there are no flights with airmen only on board?
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Reid.
What we just witnessed was not a routine exchange of talking points or a polite disagreement over policy. It was a moment where the quiet mechanics of power were dragged into the open. Senator Reid looked directly at the Secretary of Defense and laid out a series of facts that, taken together, formed a troubling picture. Senior leaders dismissed without explanation, critical commands left without confirmed leadership, internal turmoil consuming the highest office of the Department of Defense, and reports of polygraph threats aimed at senior members of the military itself. It was not said with theatrical anger. It didn't need to be. The weight of the words did the work on their own. This moment matters because it cuts to the core of how a democracy governs its most powerful institution. The military is not just another federal agency. It is an organization entrusted with extraordinary authority built on discipline, trust, and continuity of command. When leadership becomes unstable, when senior positions remain vacant for months, when the focus shifts inward to leaks, investigations, and internal suspicion, the consequences are not abstract. They ripple outward into readiness, morale, and the credibility of American power on the world stage. The Secretary's response followed a familiar pattern in modern politics. He dismissed the concerns as media exaggeration, reframed disruption as necessary change, and contrasted his actions with what he described as global disorder under the previous administration. He spoke of moving fast, restoring deterrence, rebuilding strength, and reviving a warrior ethos. These are powerful phrases. They are designed to reassure. But they also raise a deeper question. Can strength be rebuilt through instability? Can clarity be achieved through chaos? And at what point does decisive leadership cross the line into institutional strain? What Senator Reid forced into the open was not simply a disagreement over management style. It was a clash over the meaning of civilian control and professional military leadership. Threatening polygraph tests against senior officers is not just an internal personnel matter. It signals a culture of mistrust at the very top. It suggests a leadership environment where loyalty is questioned, where silence is enforced through fear rather than confidence, and where the chain of command becomes clouded by suspicion. This hearing also exposed something else, the tension between speed and stewardship. The Secretary argued that rapid change is necessary in a dangerous world. And it is true, the global environment is unstable, unpredictable, and unforgiving. But speed without stability carries its own risks. Leaving commands like Cyber Command without confirmed leadership for extended periods is not a minor bureaucratic issue. It touches on the nation's ability to defend itself in domains that do not pause while Washington debates. There was a moment, subtle but telling, when Senator Reid reminded the room that history can be viewed differently. That what is framed as weakness by one administration may be rooted in decisions made long before. In that brief exchange, the hearing shifted from partisan blame to something more enduring, accountability across time. Decisions made by presidents, secretaries, and generals do not exist in isolation. They accumulate. They shape the options available to those who come next. And when those decisions are simplified into slogans, the public loses sight of the complexity and the cost. Perhaps the most important revelation of this exchange is how fragile institutional trust can be. The Department of Defense does not function on rhetoric alone. It relies on processes, norms, and mutual respect between civilian leaders and uniformed professionals. When senior aides are dismissed in rapid succession, when investigations dominate headlines, when personal communication practices become the subject of Inspector General review, confidence erodes. Not just inside the building, but among allies, partners, and the American people themselves. This was not about personalities. It was about systems, about whether leadership at the highest level is creating clarity or confusion, about whether reform is being guided by strategy or driven by impulse, and about whether the pursuit of strength is reinforcing the foundations of the institution or quietly weakening them. As the hearing moved on, the tension lingered. No dramatic outburst, no definitive resolution. Just a record now entered of serious concerns raised in a public forum, and a defense that leaned heavily on narrative rather than reassurance through transparency. That is often how consequential moments in governance unfold, not with explosions, but with questions left unanswered. In a democracy, oversight is not an inconvenience, it is a safeguard. It is how power is tested, how authority is justified, and how trust is maintained. What we saw today was that process at work, uncomfortable but necessary. A reminder that even the most powerful offices are not above scrutiny, and that leadership is measured not only by how forcefully it acts, but by how responsibly it governs. The stakes of this moment extend far beyond one hearing room. They speak to how America manages strength in an era of uncertainty, how it balances urgency with judgment, and how it preserves the integrity of institutions that cannot afford to fracture from within. These are not partisan questions. They are civic ones. If you believe that transparency matters, that accountability strengthens rather than weakens our institutions, and that informed citizens are essential to a functioning republic, then stay engaged, subscribe to Liberty Report USA. Support our work to expose the truth, challenge power, and bring clarity to the moments that shape our democracy.